Chief Justice will now administer the oath of allegiance and then the oath of office.
I, Peter John Cosgrove, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
I invite you to make the oath of allegiance.
Thank you. I, David John Hurley, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen of Australia and her other realms and territories, Head of the Commonwealth. To David John Hurley, Companion of the Order of Australia, Distinguished Service Cross greeting. We do, by this our commission, under our sign manual and the Great Seal of Australia, appoint you, David John Hurley, to be, during our pleasure, our Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia. And we do authorise, empower and command you to exercise and perform all and singular the powers and directions contained in the letters patent dated 21 August 2008 relating to the office of Governor-General, or in future letters patent relating to that office, according to such instructions as our Governor-General for the time being may have received or may in future receive from us, and according to such laws as are from time to time in force. And we do declare that the powers conferred by this our Commission include any further powers that may in future be assigned to the Governor-General in accordance with Section 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. The Commission is signed at its head by Elizabeth R. and was given at our court at Buckingham Palace on 30 May 2019. It is countersigned by Her Majesty's Command, Scott Morrison, Prime Minister. I now invite the Chief Justice of Australia to inspect the Commission.
Even today, 10 years later, many of the wounds have not healed. The bitterness lives on in those whose lives were changed forever.
Just walked in the gate, got king hit and got carried out.
So, how did it happen and why? Well, in many respects, the government which came to an end here on the steps of Parliament House 10 years ago was an experiment, a grand experiment that failed. That experiment began on the night of December 2nd, 1972, when the Australian people elected their first Labor federal government in 23 years. In many ways, those years in the wilderness were at the heart of Labor's failure. Gough Whitlam himself had been on the opposition benches for 20 years. Many of his new ministers were old men who'd spent the best years of their lives in opposition. Only one, Fred Daly, had served in a Labor government before. He understood only too well the compulsive urge to implement the reforms they'd been planning for decades. At that moment, on November 11, 1975, the Governor-General, Sir John Kerr, stepped in. Kerr imposed his own solutions. He took the unprecedented step of dismissing Gough Whitlam and appointing Malcolm Fraser as caretaker Prime Minister. Fraser promised to make no major policy decisions and to hold an election as soon as possible. And on the steps of Parliament House, the Governor-General's secretary read that historic proclamation.
By His Excellency's command, Malcolm Fraser, Prime Minister, John R. Kerr, Governor-General. God save the Queen.
Well may we say, God save the Queen. Because nothing will save the Governor-General.
Government House, Canberra, where the Labor Party today ended more than 7 years in the political wilderness. Mr Hawke and his 27 ministers arrived here for the swearing-in ceremony that would put them in government. For the first time, cameras were allowed inside the Governor-General's study.
I, Robert James Lee Hawke, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God.
Morrison, you claim to be the Prime Minister of this country. No, you're not. Why? Because you have breached the law, and I'll come to that bits of law that you breached. But first I want to address the Australian Electoral Commission and its Act. It's unlawful. Section 8 of our Constitution, that's Part 2, Section 8, so you can read it later. It says that when you vote for the House of Representatives, or for a senator, you can vote only once for the House of Representatives and for the senator. That's set down in Section 8 of our Constitution. Pretty clear? Did you get that? What happened at the election? Oh, it was interesting, wasn't it? Your little papers come out, your green paper has 8 names on it. It is compulsory to fill out every one of those numbers. If you mark it in any other way, don't fill out those numbers or change it or delete anything, it's invalid. So you are forced to vote for 8 people when Section 8 of our Constitution says you vote for 1. And you only vote once, but you're voting 8 times on the same document. How do you explain that? Except with lies and deceit. Now, you go to the Senate paper. Big, long, white paper full of heaps of names. Above the line, it says you are compelled to vote for 6 people. But they're not people, they're political parties. And you, even if it was true you vote for 6, there's not 6 there. Because if somebody voted for the Liberal Party, which they did, you voted for 2 Liberal Party members. And when you voted for Labor, you voted for 2 Labor Party members. Isn't that nice? 2 of each. Only 1. That's all you're allowed in law. 1. Why is it like that? So you can mislead and deceive the public. Then 1 Green and 1 other person got in. Rod Cullerton got 398 votes above the line. I got 251. That's fine. I voted below the line for me. And I didn't get a vote below the line. My vote, when you decided that all the votes below the line were preferences. No, they were not. They weren't. They were my vote and all the other people's vote for me, and each of those, what you call minor parties, they're not minor parties. They have the same rights as every other single party. To put candidates up to the governor of the state that we can vote for him. Because that's how it happens in the Constitution. At the state level, under the control of the governor, not under the control of the political parties through the Australian Electoral Commission. That's treason. That's fraud on our Constitution. You've altered and changed our Constitution to accommodate your unlawful process. Out, the whole lot. Why were they still there? Why were they still getting paid? Why were you still getting paid? And Section 42 says the whole lot of yous are sitting unlawful, with the exception of Jackie Lambie, if she holds to the oath of allegiance she swore when she joined the military. Because here's the clanger for you, Scott Morrison and all the people that you call your members of Parliament. Section 42, every senator and every member of the House of Representatives shall, before taking his seat, make and subscribe before the Governor-General, which we don't really have, he's just a pretend one, or some person authorised by him, an oath or affirmation of allegiance in the form set forth in the schedule to this Constitution. This Constitution, not something you dream up, no other documents, nothing. Now, I've got it here. It's actually to Queen Victoria, but that changes because it says to her heirs and successors. Scott Morrison. I, Scott Morrison, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God. You didn't swear that.
Your Excellency, I present the Honourable Scott Morrison to be sworn in to the office of Prime Minister.
Mr Morrison, I invite you to take and subscribe the oath of office as Prime Minister of Australia.
I, Scott John Morrison, do swear that I will well and truly serve the people of Australia in the office of Prime Minister, and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia, so help me God.
Didn't we have a referendum in 1999 saying we wanted to retain the Crown? Everything to do with the Crown? Did we give you permission to remove our Constitution? No, we didn't. Did we? And now you've got a problem because of this Constitution. You call yourself the executive government. The cabinet is the executive government. No, Scott, there's a problem here because if you don't know, you have to. The law says so. There is no excuse for not knowing the law, have you? When they added local government to the state constitution, they contravened 106, which is the authority for the state constitution to exist. So they knocked out all the states. Doesn't matter what you think, go read your constitution. The constitution only continues subject to this constitution. It gets the power to alter according to its constitution, but subject to this. Then 107, 108 and 109 of this constitution, ours, what does that do? It sets up the states. The High Court's ruled on it. HCA 48 of 1996. You can't get around that. 109 doesn't remove local government from the state constitution, allow it to continue. It's there. It's being abused. You were paying local governments. Oh, look at that. 1974, we said you can't have it. 1988, we said no. 1999, we wiped out COAG. And we wanted to retain the Crown. Wanted to retain our Constitution. He's only the foreman of the House of Representatives. He has no control whatsoever over the Senate. They have a president elected by senators. That president holds the same position over the Senate as you do over the Parliament. You're a foreman. That's all you are.